have a break and the exhibit hall opens, and besides that, we have the opening ceremonies at 5 o'clock. Ooh, 5 o'clock. I'm volunteering for that. Okay. Nice schedule. So, this month, what are you reading? I didn't exactly plan on having this panel. It was a surprise, but I do love surprises. Surprises are great. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to have people raise their hands. Not yet. Not yet. And bring about 10 people up. And it's going to be very informal. We're just going to have people talk about, what the latest book they've been reading is. And I'll start. And so I'm currently reading Pride and Prejudice. Because I like to be able to say that I've read Pride and Prejudice. And I found that I've read the first 10 chapters, and my ability to talk to people that I'm interested in has, shot up. Reading parts about, you have to show your interest to people, or, they're not going to know, you have to make that step. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So it's improving my dating life. So I'm reading Pride and Prejudice. I'm also reading The Bermuda's Triangle by Maureen Johnson, which I have to make sure I get her to sign. And it's a great story about, it's a lesbian love romance. Possibly why it's taking me so long to read it. And those are the 2 books that I'm actively reading. I'm reading a lot. I'm rereading some Green books right now. On the plane, I was reading this great author. Her name's Robin Reardon. I don't know if any of you would recognize her, but she writes a lot of books about gay male teens, and really taps into inner angst. So yeah, if I can have some people raise their hands who want to talk about the books that they've been reading, I will come and find you. And you each take a minute or 2 and talk. I'm sure that you're all reading something. And that will be our panel. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Katya. You. I promise to take some more people. So everyone.
And here's the lineup.
Okay, I actually brought the books that I'm reading right now with me because I'm totally planned like that. It's called Daughter of the Flames by Zoe Marriott. I could be saying it wrong, but whatever. What if your deadliest enemy was the only one who could save you? In an ancient temple in the mountains of ruin, 15-year-old Zira trains to become a warrior priestess, fighting against the occupying forces of tyrannical King Aberon. Then terror strikes at everything Zira loves. To survive, she must unravel the secrets of her identity, decide her people's fate, and accept her feelings for men who should be her enemy.
Hi, everybody.
Hi!
Thank you. So I just finished reading the Mortal Instruments series. For those of you who have not read it, please go read it. It is so amazing. So the first book is called City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. It's about a girl named Clary who finds out something about her past that she didn't know when she meets a group of interesting people who are doing some interesting things. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's definitely a really good read. There's love and comedy and romance, and it does break your heart a little bit, but what book doesn't do that? So, City of Bones, woo!
Hi, I'm Cherie. I just finished reading a book called Cinder.
Woo!
I don't know the author, so nobody wants to say it. It's more of like a fairy tale story, but it's like a futuristic sci-fi, dystopian. Those are my favorite genres. She's a cyborg, and she plays Cinderella. Cinder is her name. And I don't want to ruin it, but Cinderella, you know what's going to happen, right? So if you like fairy tales and you like futuristic stuff, read Cinder, because then there's the sequel, Scarlet, came out. I read that, I loved it too. It's about Little Red Riding Hood. And then there's Winter and there's Snow coming out in the next 2 years. I'm super excited. Go read it.
Okay, so I just finished reading a book called Geek-tastic by
Yes!
by a collection of various authors, some of whom are going to be here. And I just loved it because it very much tapped into my inner kind of weird geek nerd. And it helped me to know that there are other people, even authors, who share this awkward sort of weirdness. So, yeah.
Hi, my name's Elena, and I have a really weird taste for books. Like I love The Catcher in the Rye, and I love John Green, and I love obviously Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and those things. And then there's this new series, and I can't remember the name of the author because I can never remember authors' names, so I'm sorry. But the first book is called The Name of the Wind, and it's huge.
Patrick Rothfuss.
What?
Patrick Rothfuss.
Patrick Rothfuss?
Yes.
All right, that is his name. Anyway, so they're gigantic books, especially if you get them in paperback, but they're so worth the read. They're sort of like magic books for older people, I guess. So like if you like Harry Potter and magic and you want to continue that in sort of an adult way, do that. And I'm currently reading The Space Between Us, which I also don't know the name of the author, but it's about two women living in India, and one is in the upper caste and one is in the lower, not the lowest caste, but the lower caste, and it's about the differences in that. And it's really interesting because there's, we have differences in classes here, but there's nothing like that like it is in India, and it's sort of like opening my mind to this new world, which is what reading is all about. So go for it and read.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. Are you Anthony? Yeah, I am. So as you can see, I really love Les Mis, and I've recently been reading The Brick. I'm in Waterloo right now. Yeah. I don't get how it's related, but I'm sure it'll come into play.
It does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you should read it because it's really, really good, and it goes a lot more into detail than like the musical and the movie are really good, but the book goes a lot more into detail, and you get really in touch with the characters, and it's really, really good. So you should read it. Hi, I'm reading Fahrenheit 451. Ray Bradbury, and it's about a dystopian world where firefighters, instead of putting out fires, are in charge of starting them and burning books. And most books that you really like and are enjoying, you try and race through and get to the end, but I'm dragging my feet because I think it's going to be really, really sad and I'm going to weep. But I do recommend it, and there's a reason why books are classics, and I appreciate that so many people in this room have read that great book.
So has anyone here seen BBC Sherlock? Pick up on little bits because they really add in all these little details, which is really impressive. And the books are awesome, and you don't have to read them all. I mean, he has a ton of short stories and longer ones, so yeah, they're awesome.
Hi. I'm reading like 4.5 books at the same time right now. One that I just started today is Concrete Angel by Cassandra Clare, which is like the sequel to City of Bones, but the sequel to the entire series, really. And I'm also reading World War Z because the movie's coming out, and it's really, really good, but it's really, really gory, so it's taking a really long time. And then I'm also reading, like 2 other people are, Les Mis, and I'm like 300 pages in. It's bad. And the original Sherlock Holmes, which are really, really good. And there's another series that I really like, that I got really into, is the Divergent series. Yes, and that is beautiful and amazing, and both books I stayed up till like 4 o'clock in the morning finishing it in one go. So read those.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I just finished 2 books the other night, one of which is like a classic, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And oh my god, my heart broke. And it explores racial issues, and it's really good, and I suggest it. It's sad, but it's so beautifully written, and that's really good. And then the other one I finished was Please Ignore Vera Dietz. Yeah? Okay, I got a couple. Which also explores, The Bluest Eye also explores women's issues, and So does Please Ignore Very Deeds somewhat. I think it's really nice because it has a beautifully complex main female character, which we need more of. And yeah, feminism! And it also explores death and grieving in a really interesting and beautiful way. And it's also sad, but it has, whereas The Bluest Eye kind of ends and you're like, oh, that's terrible. Please Ignore Very Deeds kind of wraps it up nicely. So I would recommend Please Ignore Very Deeds and The Bluest Eye. Thank you.
I'm not sure where these chicken tenders came from, but they're the best things in the world. So this is basically going to be how the end goes on for the rest, and not me talking about chicken tenders. So we could probably have an entire meetup. So yeah, raise your hand and come talk about books. Actually, if there was, okay, so we're gonna have someone come here, and then someone's gonna stand here, and someone's gonna stand here, and we are going to form a line that way. So whoever gets here first is first, and whoever's there last is last. And we will continue to do this.
So I read this book in the beginning of the school year. It's called The King's Shadow. I don't know who the author is. It's somewhere near the beginning of the alphabet. Basically, it's about this boy in medieval times. His father gets killed, and then he gets his tongue cut out. Then, basically, his uncle ends up selling him as a slave because of this medieval law thing. I don't know. And he ends up being the slave to the future King of England. And the ending is really sad if you don't know English history. And when I read it, I didn't. So it was really sad, and it's really good. So yeah.
If you like dark fantasy, my favorite two authors are Holly Black and Neil Shusterman. Holly Black writes like weird modern fairy tales that are really creepy and really cool. And Neil Shusterman wrote a bunch of books. One of them, my favorite, is called Unwind. Anyone's heard of that? It's kind of a dystopia, but mostly weird sci-fi about a society where abortion is banned, but if you don't want your kid when he or she is 13, you can have them unwound, which means their body is taken apart for donations. So it's good. It's really good.
Following that. I just read the second Daughter of Smoke and Bone book. The author is here, of course. This is one of the many Angel series out there, but it is one of the two, the other being Mortal Instruments, that is making an enormous sensation. Daughter of Smoke and Bone has amazing surprises and twists and is definitely a cut above the other Angel books. And if you haven't read book 2, you thought all the surprises were in book 1, but she gets more surprises in book 2. And by the way, I'm leading the discussion of angels and demons and things like that at this con, and it is no longer at the same time as Cassandra Clare's talk. It is now right after Cassandra Clare's talk. So please go to her talk and then join us, and we'll talk about angels.
Secret series is by Sue Dynamis Botch, I think it is. And it's about these two people named Cassandra and Max Ernest, and they have to stop these people on the Midnight Sun. And yeah.
This is really good.
All right. So there's this little underground show called Game of Thrones. I have just started reading the first book. I haven't seen any of the show yet. I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to watch it. I'm like 200 pages in and I'm already dead. I can't this is my heart is broken already. I'm aware that I'm going to die before this is over. Okay. And also, I am rereading Christine by Stephen King. I love him so much. I'm just going to say that. He's amazing. You all should read Stephen King if you haven't. Awesome.
Hello, my name is Annabelle.
I'm currently reading 3 things. I'm reading Oliver Twist, which is much more difficult than I anticipated. And that's a classic, so if you haven't read it, that's kind of important. And on a completely different note, I'm reading The Last Dragon Slayer by Jasper Fforde, which is kind of like if you took fantasy and smushed it together with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's really, really funny and really entertaining and really creative and zany, so that's really fun. And then I'm rereading one of my favorite books, which is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. It's amazing. It's kind of one of the ones that started the trend of the secret world under London. That was kind of one of the first ones, so it's really fantastic, and you all should check it out.
Hi, my name is Aubrey. I just finished rereading my favorite trilogy pretty much of all time, the Infernal Devices trilogy. If you don't want your heart broken over and over and over and over and over and over and over, do not read this trilogy.
It's already too late for that.
But it's sort of it's written by Cassandra Clare, and it's sort of a prequel series set in London before the Mortal Instruments series. And the main character, Tessa, doesn't know who she is, and then there's this really, really awesome guy named Will Herondale. If you heard of Jace Herondale, they're related. And then there's also Jem, who's actually, I don't want to give any spoilers, but you'll probably find this in really soon if you read it. Jem is poisoned by demon powder, and he has to take the powder regularly or he will die. And that will continue through the trilogy, so that's kind of important.
Yay! Hello, I'm Kira, and I read this really great book called The Dream of Perpetual Motion by Dexter Palmer, and I found it at Powell's here in Portland, and it kind of, changed my life because it was so awesome and mind-blowingly lyrical and beautiful and sad and great. And then I also read Tell the Wolves I'm Home, which is this book that I don't remember the name of the author, but it was another really good one about this girl in the 1980s with a gay uncle, and she loves him a lot, but she loves the forest, and it's better than it sounds. And then I also read the trilogy Eyes Like Stars. This is the first book, and it brings in a lot of Shakespeare, because I like theater a lot, and it brings in Shakespeare to this theatrical story of words, a person who can control with words and has word magic, and again, a lot better than it sounds. Thanks.
I am Akasha, and I'm currently reading 3 books. I'm reading Divergent, and I'm reading Girl in the Steel Corset, and I'm reading Invisibility by Andrea Kramer and David Leviathan.
Okay, so this is just in case that your British fix isn't quite being satisfied by Harry Potter and Doctor Who and Sherlock and Torchwood and everything else that BBC ever does. But I have read before, and I'm rereading again, Fool by Christopher Moore. And you should read everything that Christopher Moore ever writes, because he's got a really prolific collection, but Fool is really the jewel of it. It's the narrator is the jester from King Lear, and it's hilarious. It's one of those books that I have to stop about once a page because I'm laughing too hard to keep reading. So you should read it. It's like a British comedy in written form, but it is very bawdy for our littler fans. So do one.
I am reading a couple of books right now. I'm reading The Witch and the Wizard, and I got the first book on Tuesday, and since then I've read 3 of the books because I literally cannot put it down. So yeah, also, I'm kind of wondering why no one has mentioned John Green so far.
I mentioned because everyone excited.
Okay.
Hello, I'm I just finished a really good book actually on the plane ride here. It's called Eleanor in Park by Rachel. She's actually here. It was amazing. I saw it in like the news section next to The Fault in Our Stars. And The Fault in Our Stars is like one of the best books I've ever read. Yeah. And then saying a lot because I've read a lot of books. So I picked it up and it's a love story, but it's not like don't get turned off by that. It's a really, really good book and it's really deep. And John Green himself did a review of it and said it was amazing. So if that doesn't get you to read it, then I don't think anything will. And I really think you should read it. It's really, really good.
Hi, my name's Brittany, and I'm a bookaholic. So, two of my favorite books, one of these was already mentioned. So one is The Book Thief by Marcus. So it's amazing, and if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of about this girl who gets adopted, and then it's during World War II, and her family takes in like a Jewish refugee, and it's kind of about, she really likes reading, so I kind of connected to her in that way, and it's about just her experience with that. And my other favorite book, or books rather, is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't read that, you must. It's hilarious, like literally the funniest book I've ever read. And if you have read it, you need to read like the next 3 or 4 books, or however many there are in the series. Thanks.
Okay, so I have 3, bear with me. First, I just now finished Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling, which is very, very different from Harry Potter. And it was astounding. You start reading and it's just swear words everywhere. You're just like, who are you? And it was really different and kind of showed her influence by Jane Austen in a more modern setting. And it's really long, but I got so invested in the characters, and it was brilliant. So then, I just started reading Summon the Keeper by Tanya Huff, who is an amazing Canadian writer, and it's Canadian magic and a talking cat, and I just started it, but it's really interesting. And then, I can't afford it yet, so I haven't bought it, but Neil Gaiman's book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, just came out this week. And I had his wife read one chapter to a party that I was at, and it's about a younger kid, but it's really dark, and there's something about a nanny and...
Neil Gaiman's wife?
Yes.
You were at a party with Neil Gaiman's wife?
Yes.
How?
Her Kickstarter, there was a house party option, so I donated $100 and was... No, he wasn't there because he was in England at the time, but
like Neil Gaiman's wife?
Yep. We played a game of werewolf and she killed me. I know, it's
That is 1 degree of separation away from Neil Gaiman. I bet they like sleep in the same bed and stuff.
So yeah, it was beautiful and I can't wait to read it. That's it.
I also just finished Casual Vacancy, and it was fantastic, and it took me a little bit to get used to it, because for a while I had to actively forget that J.K. Rowling wrote it, but it was absolutely wonderful. But one of my favorite series is the Graceling trilogy by Kristen Hugh, and it was the first series that just I absolutely fell in love with almost as much as I love Harry Potter, and that's saying a lot. Her characters are so amazing, and her world is so cohesive, and you just fall into it and you don't want to leave. It's almost fantasy, but not quite, and it's absolutely brilliant.
So no one cheered when she said The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. Okay. So I just finished reading like a month ago a book that was written by comedian and nerd Chris Hardwick. He runs the Nerdist podcast on the Nerdist Network and the Nerdist Show on the BBC. And he wrote a book that's actually not a fantasy and it's not a fictional type book. It's a self-help book for nerds, and it's called The Nerdist Way, Reaching the Next Level in Real Life. And I read it because I had a lot of problems in school and stuff, and I know for a fact a lot of you guys have too, and I know that you've had problems just because that's what life brings. So if you just need a self-help book for nerds, then read Chris Hardwick's novel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan, and I'm like recently rereading one of my favorite series like ever. It's called The Maze Runner. Yeah. It's pretty popular. It's not super popular, but they're making a movie, and it's dystopian. I know, I hate dystopian. Trust me, I'm sick of it. But it's not like normal dystopian, and it's super sci-fi, and it's really hard to explain. But it's about all these kids trapped in like this maze. And they're like in the center of this maze, and they're trying to get out of the maze so that they can go back to the real world, and they have no memory of the real world. And it's like this huge. There's only 4 books in the series, including a prequel. The prequel is amazing. Just read it because I really hope the movie's good, but I'm not sure. And the books are like just the best things ever, so you should read them. And yay, reading.
So my name's Maggie, and I like to read books a lot. So I'm sure I could stand here and talk about how great The Fault in Our Stars is. I'm just going to go with John Green, and I'm going on a different track. I'm going to go with Will Grayson. Recently came to the attention that a certain someone in this room that I'm staring at right now that may or may not have just been at this podium had not read that book. So, yeah, she's alone, she's hiding right now. And I know a lot of people tend to put it aside since it's like a collaboration and not solely John Green, but it is so great because it has multiple gay people, it has an asexual person, it's hilarious, you'll be laughing and crying because it's John Green, for God's sake, and he's perfect. And not John Green, there's this one book, and I'm ashamed of myself because I've read it so many times, but I don't remember the author, and it's called Elsewhere. Yes. And basically what it is, it takes the whole concept of the afterlife, and in like real life, you grow up, and then this book takes the concept of an afterlife, you grow down. So it's like you go backwards until you're a baby and you're like sent off to be reborn. And that book had me laughing and crying and just, it's one of those books that after you finish, you just close it and you're like, wow. And I was studying for finals this year, and I decided to not study and just reread that book. And I stayed up till I think 3 in the morning finishing it, and it was totally worth it. So, Elsewhere.
Speaking of Will Grayson, in your schedule, there is a list of the books that people are talking about. Someday, like not right now. I don't know
Well, that's why I'm recording it, because otherwise I won't remember.
Oh, great. So if you happen to have like a Tumblr or Twitter or something, and you want to, release a list of what people have talked about, I'm sure everyone here would appreciate that a lot. If you're able to. If not, I understand.
I have 2 teenagers that they can read go through it.
Make it a chore. Give them allowance. Transcribe it. All right, thank you guys so much.
Okay, on the plane, I started Perfect Scoundrels by Ali Carter, which I haven't read enough of it to have an opinion yet. But the last good book I read was American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And you might have noticed me hyperventilating every time someone said Neil Gaiman. So, people say American Gods is his best book. I disagree. I think some of his books are better, but what is great about American Gods is the perfect ending. It's like the most perfect ending you have ever seen anywhere. And American Gods is about the old gods from religions that have died out trying to take over America, which has new gods like internet and TV and such. And read Neil Gaiman. I cannot stress this enough. I don't care who you are or what you like to read. Read Neil Gaiman. He has such a rich voice.
So a few weeks ago, I finished this book called Mark of Athena. So it's one of the books in the Heroes of Olympus series, which is the second part in like a series thing. It's after the Percy Jackson series. And so unless you want to like curl up in a ball and die, do not read the ending. Then you curl up and die. But the rest of the book is like beautiful and gorgeous and amazing. There's got like demigods, like gods and gods and peoples. It's magic. Thank you.
A while ago, I read this book called The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight. And it's really good. It's about a girl who is going to London for her dad's second wedding. And she's never met her stepmom-to-be. And in the airport, she meets a boy named Oliver, and they fall in love. And then when they get to London, they get separated in the airport. And the rest of the book is about if they can be brought back together. And it's actually really, really good. So you should read it.
So I finished reading 2 books recently. Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, which is an amazing book. It's about aliens, and if you haven't heard about it, it's more takes place during the apocalypse rather than anything else. And I'm not a huge fan of alien books, but that book was just amazing. And the second book was The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, which was also awesome, by Michelle Fletkin. And it's thriller, it kind of just messes with your mind, but it's so good, just amazing, really well written.
I'm currently reading Homeland by Cory Doctorow.
That book is so good.
He's a really cool blogger and writes super nerdy books about super nerdy things like computer programming, which I enjoy a lot. And Homeland is a sequel to Little Brother, which is also really good. And it has a lot of political activism sorts of things and how the internet relates to that. So that's really cool. And all of Cory Doctorow's books are really good, so you should read them.
So I'm currently obsessed with the Shades of London series by Mario. And it's about a girl from the South who goes to live in London for a year to attend boarding school there. And while she's there, she meets this group of people with supernatural powers, to just put it like that. And there's a Jack the Ripper copycat killer going around. It's really amazing if you like thrillers or fantasy or anything, and I would recommend it to anyone.
Butting really quickly about the Shades of London series. Butting in really quickly about the Shades of London series. I somehow, Maureen Johnson's amazing. Everyone knows this. She runs the track. And at Leakycon 2011, I ended up coming across Name of the Star ARC. And on Twitter somehow I got the Madness Underneath ARC, and they are some of the best books I've ever read, definitely some of the best Maureen Johnson anything. So Shades of London, the first book is The Name of the Star, and the second is The Madness Underneath, and there's a third book coming out next year.
Hi, I'm Bethany. The first book I want to talk to you about is Warm Bodies.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 times better than the movie. I'm a third of the way through it, and I already think it's so much better. And then the next book is Howl's Moving Castle. I read that book 3 times a year. I read it probably more than 10 times, and I read it over and over. And the story is it's not action, 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 or love, love, love. It's it seems very plausible. You could go through your life like this, and the ending is just, it always leaves me smiling, and nothing really horrible happens. So sometimes you need a book that doesn't make you cry or die.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that a month ago I just realized I had City of Bones sitting in my library for years. Never read it, found out Cassandra Clare was going to be here. I read the last 5 books within the last month. So I am totally excited for this panel coming up this weekend.
But one of my favorite series ever is Pendragon by DJ McHale. So I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, which is kind of sad because it's a 10-book long series and it's probably one of like the best things ever, except the ending is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But basically there's like 10 different worlds, a book for each world, and there's a guy named Saint Dane who's bent on the destruction of every single world in Hala, which is like the world of all 10 worlds. And you have a traveler from each world who's trying to save their world from destruction. And it's really intense, and it's basically a lot of action and drama, and I highly suggest reading this series, especially if you just like getting invested in something, because like I said, it's 10 books long. So it's so good, so amazing. So if you guys ever have a long period of time to read a book, I suggest Pendragon.
My name's Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
And if any of you haven't read Ender's Game yet by Orson okay, science fiction, really good. If you haven't read it, you really should before the movie. I've been dying for the movie to be made, and it's really good. And I just finished, I'm currently in the middle of The Color Purple by Alice Walker.
Yes.
Very
Good book.
I was expecting kind of like Secret Life of Bees, Maya Angelou, but it's much darker, more like real. Takes place in the South in kind of like late or early 1900s. It's really good. And then also, another book that I'm thinking of. I can't remember the title of. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I just re-finished Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. And I actually love this book. I've been carrying it around with me forever, and my friends think that I've actually never finished it because it's always with me, and they're like, why are you taking so long to read that book? Anyways, second book that I've been reading is Red Dragon, and I forget his author's name, and it's way creepier than I expected, but it's really good, and yeah, it's gory, so don't read it if you don't like that, so thanks, guys.
Hello again. So the first book is Dune, which is Game of Thrones. It's kind of like that, but it's sci-fi. It takes place in the future, and there's all these different planets, and there's like some religion thrown in, and it's awesome. And there's more books, but you don't really have to read them if you don't want to. And then Cry the Beloved Country is one of my favorite books ever. I had to read it for school. It takes place in South Africa during apartheid, and it's about this father-son relationship. And the writing's just amazing. And then the last one is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, which I had to read last year for school, and it's amazing. So pretty much it's this group of American expatriates living in Europe, and they go to Spain for this really awful trip, and it's fantastic, and you get really disillusioned with the First World War, obviously, and this group of people are just awful, but you love them, yes. So, yeah.
So I'm going to be the weird person here and be a guide to suggest a book. But I am currently rereading The Silmarillion by Tolkien, lesser known than the original trilogy, I guess. It's the history of the elves, and it explains the background of the elves, and it also tells where the Balrogs went, how come that's the last Balrog, and stuff like that. It's a really great book. It takes a little work to get into it, but it's a really fantastic book once you're into it. And just in general, I would suggest Tolkien's works. They're fantastic. And that's all. Thank you.
Hi. Going off that, I just started reading The Hobbit, so I'm really excited about getting into that. And one trilogy that I've loved since I started reading it is called the Gemma Doyle trilogy by Lilla Bray. Yeah. So there's 3 books, obviously. It starts with A Great and Terrible Beauty, and then Rebel Angels, and then The Sweet Far Thing. They're amazing. It's set in Victorian London, follows the girl Gemma Doyle, and she finds out that she has magic and can go into a different world. It's really interesting. Like everybody else, a lot of people have been saying, the ending will make you cry and cry and cry. But it's really all worth it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Karen. I use the Lit Day authors to be introduced to new authors. So last year, following up what she said, it was Libba Bray and it was Beauty Queen, which is a great book about these beauty queens who get in a plane crash and they're lost in the woods, and all those skills that got them beauty queen status gets them nowhere in the woods. The one this year that I looked at from the authors who are going to speak is Co Booth's Tyrell, which is exposure to deep, deep poverty, and for that, very insightful. The final one I would note, and I'm going to go out on a limb, it's a non-fiction book. It is My Beloved World by Justice Sotomayor, particularly poignant today since she was in the majority yesterday on the vote to invalidate Defense of Marriage Act.
I just finished Every Day by David Levithan.
Yes!
It's so good. It's kind of a weird book, but it was really good. It's about this person who every day wakes up in a different body and falls in love with a girl. And it's just like, it's kind of different than most books, but it's really good, so I recommend reading it.
Hi, I'm currently rereading this book that I picked up a long time ago. It's given to my sister, and she was like, ew. It's called Skinned by Robin Wasserman, who's here as one of the authors. I think it's a trilogy. I'm not entirely. It is? Okay. And I haven't read the other ones, but I'm rereading the first one, and now I'm like, oh my god, I have to find the other ones now. So I suggest reading Skinned by Robin Wasserman for sure. I'm also rereading the Harry Potter series. But definitely check out Skinned by Robin Wasserman.
Hey y'all. So this year I wanted to reach into the deep realms of old books, and I came up with John Carter of Mars. Anyhow, the book makes a lot more sense than the movie, and the movie will make a lot more sense after you read the book. Unfortunately, once you read the first book, you have to read the next 10 billion. The other thing that I have read, I read Dracula, and then I discovered that Bram Stoker's great-grandnephew wrote a sequel. And that's just amazing. Very, very dark, darker than Dracula, but it's definitely worth reading. It explains so much about the original book and just helped me understand vampires a little more. The third thing, my book that I discovered, I discovered David Levithan before I knew he was going to be here. But like the next day, I look on the Leakycon website and I'm like, whoa, cool. So I read The Lover's Dictionary, which it helped me understand any kind of relationship I have in my life, whether it's romantic or just friends or my parents. It just helped me understand through these words. I gained a lot of new vocabulary, but definitely one to read if you are having trouble in any type of relationship.
Okay, so I'm currently reading Game of Thrones, the third book. I'm sorry, love it, so good. And then I'm also reading Emma by Jane Austen. So good. But my favorite books, Patrick Ness. Anyone, yes. A Monster Calls is just like the most heartbreaking book. But if you're going through anything, any tragedy in life, like it is such a good book to read for that. And then his Chaos Walking trilogy is just, oh dear Lord, all the feelings, just so much going on in those books. You will be crying from start to finish. And my comfort books are by Tamora Pierce. Those are my favorite books. I absolutely adore them. I reread at least one of her series every single year. So just some recommendations for you. Thanks.
So I'm reading this new book series. It's written by this guy called J.K. Rowling, and it's called Harry Potter. He's kind of cool, I don't know if I'll read all of them. Anyway, so we have time for everyone else who is in line, and then I actually do have to ask you guys to clear out of the room. The vendor room opens at 4, and it's going to be so awesome. Maureen and Robin are running a bookstore in there, so So I'm sure that you can see a lot of titles from the day authors and titles that have been talked about today. And then go find food, take a half-hour nap, and then head over to the opening ceremonies that start at 5?
Yes.
At 5. All right, thank you guys so much for having such a great panel, and I will see you guys around the conference.
I recently read Codename Verity by Leakycon. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It's the story of a British spy who is captured in World War II, and it tells the story of her and how she became friends with her best friend. And it will rip your heart out and set it on fire. You should read it anyway. And on a completely different note, To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis is a comedy about a time traveler who is stuck in the wrong time. And so he has to blend in Victorian England with basically no information about how society works.
What was the title?
To Say Nothing of the Dog.
Hi, everyone that's left. I have not been reading anything fun for the last 2 years because I am a nursing major and I deal with dead bodies all day. So the last book series I read was the Left Behind series. And if you haven't read it, it's amazing and you should read it. And it's I know it's 12 books long and the series was actually ended years ago. But it's really good and it kind of has to do with Armageddon type thing. And if you ever want to break from reading nerdy stuff, which is hard to do, I know. But if you want to break, there's 2 books that you should probably read. It's Gabriel's Angel. I read it every Christmas. It's a romance, sappy. You know the ending, it's predictable, but it's amazing. And I read it every Christmas. It'll get you in the mood for Christmas. And the other one is Until They Bring the Streetcars Back, and it's really awesome because it deals with some awkward situations of growing up and being in high school and having to grow up away from your parents under their guidance and kind of do some things that you don't want your parents to kind of know about, and it's kind of about growing up. So it's awesome, and you should read it.
Hi. Last year, end of last year, my friend got completely obsessed with this book called The Outsiders. And I read it in February for her birthday so that we could watch the movie. Because I had to read the book before I saw the movie. And I read it, and then I read it again, and again, and again, and again, and I couldn't stop. And then I was really irritated with myself because I lost it. So if you don't know what The Outsiders is, maybe, I don't know, it's this really good book about kids in the 60s, roughly. They're a group of greasers and them dealing with the socias, which are higher class kids, and the feels will go crazy. There are so many feels in this book. Yeah, so for the love of God, read The Outsiders, please, please, please.
So I just wanted to recommend the series called the Gone series by Michael Grant. And when I started the series, I definitely thought it was a sci-fi, post-apocalyptic kind of novel. And it turned out to be very different. It's much more horror or thriller. It's very dark, it's very gory, but I just could not stop reading these books. And these horrible things keep happening to these kids, and they're trapped in this kind of dome structure. It's a bit like Stephen King's new show that's coming out, Under the Dome. You've seen the ads for that. It's kind of the same premise. But these horrible things keep happening to the characters, so you want to know if they ever get out of the dome, if they ever become happy again. So you have to keep reading it. It's the Gone series by Michael Grant.
Okay, so I have 3, so bear with me. The first one, I'm sure you've all heard of the movie The Golden Compass that they made a few years ago. I loved the movie, and then I read the trilogy by Philip Pullman, and I hated the movie because it was awful. So, please read the books. Don't listen to the religious freaks, no offense, who think it's awful and slanderous, because it's really not if you actually read it. It's phenomenal, it's beautiful, it's mesmerizing, it's mind-blowing, it's heartbreaking. So go for it. Then there's another one, I always mess up the name, so I apologize. The Immortal Secrets of Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. I think I got the title right. But it's totally great, fast read, and the books take place in like the span of like 3 days. But it's fantastic, it's great. And then the third one is just a lone book by an author named Joanne Prue. She's a writer from Canada. Her last name is Proulx. Thank you, French. But it's about, it's called Anthem for a Reluctant Prophet, and it's about an adolescent boy named Luke who has this problem with premonitions. And it deals a lot with life and death, and if you like pop punk music like Green Day and Nirvana, mention all the time, total name dropping. But yeah, it's a fantastic read. She has a brilliant mind. She has a great knack for catching the adolescent psyche. So.
Hi, I have one more. This is a bit of a strange one to end it on, but it's a book that I had to read for school initially, and then I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. It's called The Stranger. It's a French book originally. I don't know the author's name because it's French. Right, that. It's from the first wave of existentialist literature, and it's kind of heavy and intellectual. It's really, really short, so it's kind of fascinating, and it's one of those books where you hate the main character, but you kind of like him at the same time. So yeah, great. It's really cool.